The atmosphere screamed as the Iron Mule became a meteor. This wasn't a landing. It was a controlled collision. Heat shielded the cockpit in a blinding white curtain, and the G-force hit Caleb Vance like a sledgehammer to the chest. Most species recognized by the Galactic Council would have liquefied instantly under the pressure, their delicate vascular systems bursting like overripe fruit. Caleb just grit his teeth, the enamel grinding audibly, and fought the yoke with white-knuckled desperation. "Come on, you beautiful disaster," he roared over the klaxons. The hull groaned, the terrifying metallic shriek of tearing titanium. With a final, bone-jarring thud that sent shockwaves through his skeleton, the freighter plowed into the pristine docking bay of Sanctuary Station X9, carving a trench through the ferrocrete before slamming into the containment wall. Smoke billowed. Sparks rained down like aggressive confetti. Then the airlock hissed open. Caleb stumbled out, coughing, clutching a side that felt like it had been kicked by a mule. He looked up to see a perimeter of security drones and a cluster of terrified, translucent-skinned medics staring at him as if he were a ghost. He spat a mouthful of blood onto the gleaming floor and grinned, adrenaline masking the agony. "Permission to dock," he wheezed. The station groaned again, a deep, resonant vibration traveling through the floor plates. The impact of the Iron Mule had done more than scar the docking bay. It had destabilized the delicate equilibrium of the medical wing's power grid. Light fixtures flickered overhead. Suddenly, the magnetic clamps holding a massive suspended stasis unit disengaged. The heavy machinery, designed to hold multi-ton aquatic species, tilted ominously, its shadow falling directly over Dr. Lumina. The Cephalon doctor froze. Her species evolved in deep-sea, low-gravity trenches. Their fight-or-flight response was purely camouflage and stillness. She calculated the trajectory, the mass, and the lethality. The probability of survival was 0. She closed her obsidian eyes, accepting the mathematics of the inevitable. Then, a blur of motion slammed into her. It wasn't the grace of a machine, but the raw, explosive force of a biological battering ram. Caleb launched himself off the biobed, his fractured tibia protesting with a spike of white-hot agony that he simply filed away for later. He tackled Lumina, driving her clear of the drop zone just as the stasis unit crashed into the floor, shattering the tiles where she had been standing a microsecond before. Debris scattered across the room. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the hum of the settling dust and Caleb's ragged breathing. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, one arm thrown over his eyes. "Okay," he wheezed, a dry chuckle escaping his chest. That one hurt. "I think I found fracture number 18. Lumina scrambled out from under his protective reach, her bioluminescence flashing a chaotic violet, the color of absolute bewilderment. She looked at the crushed floor, then at the human who should be incapacitated by pain, yet was currently checking his watch. You intercepted the kinetic energy," Lumina stammered, her spindly fingers hovering over his chest. "Why?" "The risk assessment was catastrophic. You had a 94% chance of exacerbating your injuries to lethal levels." Caleb leveraged himself up on one elbow, wincing. "Doc, if humans waited for the odds to be in our favor, we'd still be hiding in caves banging rocks together. We don't survive by being safe. We survive by being stubborn." He nodded toward the wreckage. "That's the difference between the Galactic Council and Terrans. You guys calculate the fall. We calculate the bounce." Lumina stared at him. She looked at the heavy machinery that should have ended her life, and then at the fragile-looking pink creature that had treated physics like a suggestion. Something in her paradigm shifted. The data was undeniable. The safest option would have resulted in death. The reckless option resulted in life. She moved to the medical console, her movements sharper, less hesitant. She brought up the treatment protocol for Caleb's injuries. The standard setting was stasis and sedation, a month-long process of immobilization. Her finger hovered over the button. Then she deleted the protocol. "Computer," Lumina said, her voice finding a new, solid cadence. "Initiate accelerated osteoregeneration. Override safety limits on the calcium synthesis. Increase metabolic output to 120%. The medical droids chirped a warning. Alert! Patient stress levels will be critical. The patient is human, Lumina stated, looking Caleb in the eye. He considers stress a recreational activity. Caleb grinned, laying his head back as the biobed hummed with a higher, more aggressive pitch. The pain was sharp, but it meant healing. It meant action. Now you're getting it, Doc, Caleb said, closing his eyes. Welcome to the edge. The view is better here. As the nanobots began their work, knitting bone closer and denser than before, Lumina watched the monitors. She realized she wasn't just fixing a pilot, she was studying a new form of existence. One where broken things didn't stay broken, and where the fear of falling was eclipsed by the thrill of the ascent. The sterile light of the infirmary was blinding, a sharp contrast to the chaotic warmth of the burning cockpit. Dr. Coda, Lumina, a cephalon xenobiologist whose bones were hollow and fragile as glass, stared at the holographic bioscan hovering over the biobed. Her large obsidian eyes widened in a display of biological horror. 17 fractures, Lumina whispered, her vocalizer trembling. 17. In the rib cage, the tibia, and the humerus. Your internal telemetry indicates massive trauma. She looked down at Caleb, who was currently sitting upright and picking a shard of glass out of his flight suit. And you are conscious. You are talking. By every metric of comparative biology, you should be in shock-induced shutdown. To the galaxy, a broken bone is a death sentence. To him, it's a Tuesday, Caleb said, wincing as he popped his shoulder back into alignment with a sickening crunch. The Mina recoiled, her skin flashing a pale blue the cephalon color for nausea. Stop that. You are damaging the structure further. Nah, Doc. That's just maintenance, Caleb replied, his voice rough but steady. He tapped his chest. See, humans are weird. We're built for stress. It's called Wolf's Law. You break us, you stress the bone, and it grows back denser, stronger. We aren't static. Lumina tapped the console, bringing up a comparison chart. On the left, the delicate lattice-like skeletal structure of a standard Galactic Council citizen. On the right, the dense, solid bars of a Terran. This is not biology. This is engineering. You are a Deathworlder, an apex predator masquerading as a pilot. I prefer human ingenuity over predator, Caleb corrected, finally leaning back. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a dull throb, but his Terran spirit refused to let him show weakness. In this sector, weakness invited scrutiny, and scrutiny got your ship impounded. My ship? The grave coil blew. I had to rig a bypass using the coolant lines. It held just long enough to keep me from turning into a crater. You prioritize mechanical repair over your own biological integrity during a catastrophic descent? Lumina asked, her mind unable to bridge the gap between survival-focused caution and the recklessness before her. Survival isn't about avoiding the fall, but how fast you stand back up, Caleb muttered, closing his eyes for a moment. Besides, if the ship dies, I die. If I break a few ribs, I just drink more milk and wait a month. Easy math. Lumina looked at the bioscan again, specifically at the microfractures already showing signs of rapid clotting and inflammatory response. This was a classic science fiction story coming to life on her table. The myths of the unstoppable Space Orcs were true. 17 fractures, 0 panic, and 1 confused medical team, Lumina summarized, recording the data. You are a paradox, Caleb Vance. But I must warn you, while your dense bones saved you from the impact, the Galactic Council does not have protocols for treating a species that refuses to die.